Hello all, my name is Jussi Wieding. I'm the fund manager for EEP Africa here at Nordic Development Fund, and I would like to welcome you to our second session of our Knowledge Week. So today we will focus on the upcoming call for proposals. So I will be presenting, giving you a little bit of a brief intro myself on EEP Africa in general, and then kind of moving to the call for proposals format. After that, I will pass it on to my colleague, EEP Africa's portfolio manager, Chiesa Masaivana, to interview our EEP Africa rising energy leaders. And then, hold on a second, some technical problem. And then Chiesa will give some tips for the interested applicants who are hopefully plenty in our audience, who hopefully will be submitting applications to EEP Africa grants. And then we'll finish off with hopefully plenty of time for questions and answers, followed by a brief survey. Before we start the presentation, a couple of housekeeping rules. This session will be recorded so that it's also available to interested people afterwards who cannot, for conflicting reasons, join this webinar. And also, if you don't have time to submit questions as part of the Q&A, we will kind of collect all the questions from the chat function and then publish a frequently asked questions document in our website later on. And for those who might kind of watch the recording later on, feel free to submit questions via our email, and we will include those answers to those questions also to the frequently asked questions document later on. But it seems now that we are approximately 120 plus attendees, so I think it's good time to start. So let's start with the EEP Africa introduction. Some of you might not know much about us. You just heard that there is financing round coming, and you tuned in. So let's start with a brief intro on what we are about and what we do. So some quick facts. EEP Africa is a multi-donor trust fund. So currently we are supported by the governments of Austria, Denmark, Finland, Iceland and Switzerland, and also NDF itself as an international finance institution provides funds for EEP Africa. Our fund period is open-ended, so practically it means that as long as our funding position is good, we can keep on launching deals calls in the coming years. Our focus region is currently Southern and Eastern Africa, and Chiesa will show you a map of that in the tips for applicants section. And our niche in the market is to provide risk-tolerant early-stage financing for locally driven, innovative clean energy projects. So that's quite a kind of a bundle of terms together. So let's spend a little bit of time unpacking that. So risk tolerant for us means that we have a mandate to take risk, really supporting those early stage companies, taking their first steps, trying to prove a concept, or then de-risk kind of early scale up in challenging markets. So we expect to see some failure in our portfolio. That's within our mandate. If everybody kind of makes it perfectly, then I would say EEP Africa has failed because we clearly haven't taken the risk that we should. We can support kind of early stage projects in the form of feasibility studies, kind of piloting of concepts, or then kind of more kind of expansion stage projects, so replicating business models, technologies that have kind of worked in one market, but taking them to a more nascent market, or then just scaling up in general. Locally driven, what we mean by that is that the company itself doesn't need to be local, but the evaluation team is really looking to teams that are locally present, that really understand the market, who are there to stay. So that's something that will make your application stronger, and is kind of a due diligence measure for us too, when we see kind of very locally rooted teams. Innovation is a very, I would say, flexible term for us. We don't want to define it too strictly, because we don't always know what innovation is until we see it. So probably the best way to approach it, that if it's a concept that is not proven at scale in the market that you operate. So it can be about technology, it can be about business model, about the innovative partnership, about innovative distribution model, you name it. But it has to link to clean energy or energy efficiency. And in that regard, we are technology agnostic. So as long as you can prove that there is some type of link to clean energy, and you are aiming to run a sustainable business in the long term, then you are within our mandate. Finally, a little bit about our team. Our team consists of staff members from 3 different organizations. Nordic Development Fund is the fund manager and host institution of EEP Africa. We are based in Helsinki, and hence we need feet on the ground, and that is provided to us by our implementation support partners, SNV and Open Capital. So most of our operational team sits in Nairobi, and Giesta, who will be speaking later today, sits in Harare. And you can click that green link over there if you want to see the kind of faces of the team later on. EEP Africa activities are tied into 3 major pillars. Our core activity is the clean energy financing, which we kind of distribute to open competitive calls for proposals. Next one that we are planning to open in April, so next month. Through these competitive calls for proposals, the applicants or the successful grantees can access grants and repayable grants. The typical grant size is between 200 to 500,000 euros, but in some calls we can go even up to 1 million. This will be further defined in the application guidelines that will be published at the call launch. But we require also co-financing, so minimum 30 to 50% of co-financing is required. The earlier stage your company is, then we would require less. If you are applying our grant more to scale up your activities, to replicate them, then we would be kind of hoping to see a bit more skin in the game, so closer to 50%. And the new thing is that we can, in this call round, we can start accepting also in-kind contributions as co-financing. So part of that minimum 30% can be provided as in-kind contributions. We will lay out the exact details how we would count that in the call guidelines. This was only recently approved, so it's too early to kind of go into detail on how that will be defined. Then financing enough doesn't usually make companies to succeed. Other things are needed also. So that kind of the technical assistance for business development support, for providing networks in terms of investment facilitation is equally important, in some cases even more important. So EEP Africa has a kind of mandate for that, and from our team, our colleagues at the Open Capital have a good profile for that. So the business development support provided by us can come in multiple forms. Our grants are very flexible. We are not kind of strictly defining like how you should use it. When you pitch the project to us as part of the application process, you can kind of define in the budget how it would help your business to grow, kind of to use our grant. So one option is to integrate some business development support needs already into the grant budget, for example, in the form of external services. Then our team itself, when they conduct site visits, when they are in regular communication with you, can provide some light business development support and assistance. But then we also have an annual budget for more kind of ad hoc needs. So when we work with grantees, we realize that there is a major gap, but the concept is viable. Otherwise, we can provide ad hoc support, company-specific support, or then provide more cohort-level trainings or toolkits to help you run a successful business. And in some cases where we don't have the resources or the expertise ourselves, we will work closely with our partners and hope to connect you with other TA providers who are better suited to support you. And that links a bit to the networking aspect. So as an EEP Africa team, all the three organizations that have quite a wide networks in the sector, which we aim to use for your benefit if you become a successful grantee. So we'll try to connect you with follow-on investors so that you can get maybe your first debt investment, your first equity investment, or in some cases you need another grant or kind of a TA support. So this is something that we do very actively. And from all of our work, we have a mandate to learn, to produce knowledge, and to work in partnership. So we regularly produce knowledge products when we feel we have something good to say. We can do events such as this virtual knowledge week. And wherever possible, we'll try to collaborate with our partners to really amplify the lessons, harmonize our activities. The whole renewable energy sector is much more crowded with players now as compared to, for example, 10 years ago. So we need to be quite careful on that we don't duplicate efforts in some cases accidentally might work in harmful ways by having conflicting requirements as providers or investors or TA providers. So we try to actively reach out to our sector peers and kind of see how we can harmonize our activities. And whenever possible, we try to provide visibility and peer-to-peer learning opportunities to our grantees in events or these kind of virtual events, or organize some kind of training or peer-to-peer kind of learning group. This is just a quick taste to give you an understanding on where we work, what kind of teams we have within our portfolio. At the moment, we have approximately 39 active projects. In the last 3 calls, we've contracted 72, but quite a few of them have already reached grant closure. At the moment, we have active projects in all of our kind of focus countries, apart from Eswatini and Botswana. And if somebody's interested, what is our country list, you can see it on this slide. Thematically, I would say half of our portfolio tends to be somehow linked to solar, but that naturally takes various forms. Solar for productive use of energy, solar for residential use, e-mobility is often powered by solar-based solutions. We also have a decent kind of portfolio in clean cooking. That can be anything from improved cook stoves or then linking to kind of fuel production of, for example, waste to energy pellets or briquettes or biofuels or so forth. We also have some mini grids and projects linked to mini grids and power generation. Then the final slide on the kind of introductory part. This is just to give you a little bit of a taste. How do we define success at EEP Africa? If you're a very early stage company, we don't expect you to produce a lot of results. We expect you to prove a concept, make your team stronger, become more investor ready in a sense. So once you come into our portfolio, we try to analyze what are the gaps in your business. How does the team look like? What kind of investor documents you have in place? What kind of data, financial management systems you have? And then by the end of the grant, we hope that your team is stronger. You have better set of investor documents, a good pitch deck. In some cases, you might need better data or financial management system. Hopefully, you've proven that your product is a market fit, or you realize that it's not, but that allows you to do a successful pivot. And these would be, I would say, the success metrics, how we would consider did we happen to or manage to help you in some way. For the projects that are kind of applying our grants more for scaling up, there we expect to get more kind of results in terms of SDG indicators. And this is supported by the fact that I think 2/3 of our results come from approximately 10% of our companies. So those few performers who really manage to kind of crack the code, scale up significantly, they are the ones that produce a lot of unit sales, a lot of jobs, a lot of emission reductions, or who manage to raise a lot of funding. So especially the leverage investment, I think 80% of our results come from just less than 10% of our companies. So those are the ones who really managed to prove the sector that our model works, and then investors are happy to jump on board. But failure also is not necessarily unsuccessful for us, as long as we learn something from it. So earlier I mentioned that we have a very risk-happy mandate. So if you fail, but you learn from it, and you can help, and we can help you with that, we can kind of get those lessons to the sector, then it's still a successful project in a way. The only way you be considered as a true failure is that you fail your project and we have no idea why that is. Then we cannot help the sector to kind of prevent others from repeating that mistake or avoid that kind of barrier that eventually killed the business. So on the right side there, you see a kind of data points that we aim to be tracking from all projects, but with more bigger emphasis on those projects that are aimed to scale up and really kind of reach a scale that is meaningful in terms of SDG metrics. Then let's go to the call for proposals format. So this should be very interesting to anybody who's planning to apply for our grant. So I have only 2 slides here. First one is on lessons. So lessons from the past. So we've done 3 calls between 2018 and 2020 under NDF management. And hold on, it keeps popping the wrong slide. Let me wait a bit. Okay, now it should be back. So what we learned from those 3 last calls was that our win percentage is too low to justify what used to be a relatively heavy concept node stage. So in those 3 calls, we received more than 1,100 applications, and we contracted 72 projects. We also found out that contracting takes often a long time due to challenges in confirming the co-financing, which we need to have in place, or confirming partnerships, which might be essential for the success of the project, or simply having the essential documents in place, such as account holder confirmation or the company registration, and so forth. Also, it's important for us to really map out the risks well and understand what kind of permits and licenses the company might need, and that the kind of list would be attached into the contract. We also, especially during COVID, learned that locally strong and committed teams tend to deliver. So when things become really difficult, it's much easier to act if the core and the brains of the team is very locally present and not stuck somewhere overseas. And so companies who are overly reliant for expats, for example, that's a risk factor also for us. So based on these lessons, we are planning to introduce a call for proposal process reflected on this slide. So we would start with the expression of interest phase, which is much lighter than it used to be before. So there we just try to get the general understanding on how your company looks like, what you've done in the past, is your concept innovative, introduce some preliminary due diligence assessment in terms of required documentation, such as company registrations, to make sure that your company actually exists, and so forth. And this should take much less of your time as it took before. And then the kind of most interesting and innovative sounding applications would proceed to a long list. And here we would then take a more hands-on approach. So we are envisioning to organize a boot camp where we can really unpack the rest of the process for that cohort. And then we would conduct pitch interviews to really understand does the applicant kind of, who are they, what have they done in the past, are they able to explain their business well. In some cases, the applications are written by professional grant writers, but the pitch interview is a completely different thing. So also some companies might not be great writers, they might not have assistance in writing a grant, but they are very well versed in describing their business. So that pitch interview gives kind of levels the playing field between those who are good writers and those who really know their business. And based on the pitch interviews, we would then kind of narrow down the long list to short list. And there we would also differentiate between development phase projects, so those who are much earlier stage, like piloting, testing something, and the expansion phase projects, those who are planning to replicate those scale-up models that have already been tested somewhere, but are still considered risky and requiring grant assistance. And at full proposal stage, we will then go much more hands-on. We will really roll our sleeves with you, analyze you kind of in more detail. You have a chance to really kind of beef up your application from the EOI stage, and we will do a kind of enhanced due diligence at that point. So as some additional documentation, Giesta will later share a slide on that. We will also ask references from you. So if you have a past investor, a TA provider you've worked with, a coach, a mentor, somebody who can vouch for your character, your business, we will contact them as part of our due diligence to understand what you have done before. And in those cases where you might not have such a track record, then we can always conduct a site visit to see that the activities that you've described of having done have actually happened before we go and propose or recommend your application for approval to our investment committee. And our investment committee consists of representatives of our donors, so it will be an objective kind of body outside of our core team, and they will then do the final decision who will get grant financing. So expecting that we are launching the call around mid-April, then around December, we should be concluding the final contract in case things go as planned. So at this point, I would like to pass the floor to Giesta Masaiwana, our portfolio manager based in Harare, and she will continue introducing our rising energy leaders, interview them, and then go on to the tips for application afterwards. Giesta, the floor is yours. Take it away, please.
Thank you, UC. It is my pleasure today to announce the recipients of our Rising Energy Leader Award for 2022. The Rising Energy Leader Award shines a light on young professionals who are leading the clean energy transition in Africa. Nominees were asked to demonstrate a strong commitment to advancing clean energy solutions, demonstrate professional growth or achievements in the sector, as well as provide an ambitious plan for the future. This year, we selected 2 nominees for this award, and these 2 nominees are Felix Bolt and Retabile Mafura. Congratulations, Felix and Retabile, and I will briefly introduce the 2 before we get into discussion. So Felix is the CEO and co-founder of SolarWorks, a German manufacturer that provides innovative, reliable, affordable, and sustainable clean energy solutions to local distribution partners. Felix previously worked as an environmental engineer for fintech companies in the wind and off-grid energy sector. He was chosen for this award because he demonstrated his professional growth in the off-grid sector, from working with companies like Mobisol, Barefoot Power in East Africa, to establishing his own company in 2017. The aim of establishing his company was to build a new generation of solar off-grid products which speak to the energy needs of communities living without energy access. And he anchors his product development on experiences and lessons that he gathered from the field. With over 10 years experience and through his leadership, SolarWorks has significantly grown its network and managed to close a Series A round in 2020 and also managed to break even in 2022. Our second rising energy leader is Ratabile. Ratabile is the country director at African Clean Energy Lesotho. This is a Dutch South African social enterprise that produces and distributes ACE1 cook stoves in developing countries. Ratabile has been instrumental in the success of ACE Lesotho. She moved from being HR director to country manager due to her leadership. Ratabile was chosen for this award because she demonstrated her strategic contribution to the business through revamping their sales and marketing team and ensuring they're putting the customer at the core of their service delivery. She has demonstrated leadership skills, steering and growing a clean energy company in such a small nascent market where currently there is no legislation that directly supports clean energy initiatives. But despite all those odds, she has managed to lead her team to excel in sales and service delivery. I had the privilege of visiting ACE operations sometime last year in Lesotho, and the thing that I found most striking and witnessed within their operations is their working culture, the provision of an inclusive employment opportunities, and a very strong sense of teamwork that Ratabile has instilled in their operations. And so we're going to hear more about that during the course of this discussion. And without taking too much time, let's get talking. And I would like to begin with Felix. Felix, if you may, please tell us about yourself. What do you love most about the work that you do? I have also heard that you're good in Kiswahili. I will give you a chance to showcase your Kiswahili skills here during the discussion. Felix, over to you.
Habari nzenu kila mtu. Nafurahia kuwa selected for by EEP.
That's a good start.
So I mean, you already, I think, said a lot about myself, and it's right that I worked for the last decade in the off-grid sector, and I started off with Mobisol and then transitioned 4 years ago into SolarWorks as a off-grid manufacturing company. And I think the biggest milestone for us was reaching break-even profitability in 2022 indeed. And what I personally like most about the job is that I really like developing stuff, and then at the same time I like traveling. I like supporting people, supporting nature. So I think it's a great fit to do all of that in one thing. And I also feel that while in Europe everything is so constrained on the regulation side, in Africa there's a lot of opportunity to leapfrog technologies. So like we did with our mesh grid, where we basically introduced a new type of electricity grid, which has not been there yet, and it would be a nightmare to start this in Germany for the regulation purposes, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Felix. And it's always a plus, doing work that you love to do, traveling and enjoying meeting people in the sector. Ratabile, I'll come to you. Please also tell us about yourself and what you love about the work that you do.
Thank you very much, Chieta. That's very kind of you in the words you have extended to African Clean Energy Lesotho. Working for African Clean Energy, I started like 5 years ago, and I started knowingly that I wanted to be part of the change that I wanted to see in the world. And so my journey with African Clean Energy has started at the level of management in HR, where it gave me opportunity to hire the people that would be instrumental for the future and the future that we wanted to be, or where we wanted to go in future as a company. And so after building a team or a network of people that were determined to see a change in a country so small and maybe so underdeserving or underserved in all the markets, if you talk about water, roads, or let alone energy. And so if we don't have energy in the country, it's one of the small problems, because we have a lot more other pressing issues that are being dealt with. So therefore, touching on something that the government would take a long time because of the country type of landscape. We have big mountains and everyone owns their own mountain. We sit in dispersed areas, and it wouldn't make sense for the country to direct money into doing grids for these mountains and hidden villages. So our work was very evident that it needed to start. And so therefore, when I got into contact with African Clean Energy, what I really love most about it is the fact that I work with young professionals that have been given an opportunity, or which would have never been given, or would take a long time to be given, as we have like over 50% unemployment rate within the youth, and let alone within the other gender, which is the women gender, getting into positions that you would normally would experience a ceiling in getting into. So therefore, it became a challenge for me, and that it was that I wanted to join African Clean Energy in the venture of making access for energy within the country, within the women. And that's what makes me, that's what makes the person Retabile. Really, it has become a part of me, who I want to be, where I want to go, what I want to speak. I'm speaking energy, I'm speaking transition, I'm speaking women empowerment, I'm speaking gender, I'm speaking also inclusion, as you would have seen within the company, the many talents, differently abled people that we have been able to employ. So it has become me and the reflection of a person that a young Lesotho women or young girls would eventually, through hard work and perseverance, would want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Retabile. You touched on quite a number of key points and issues that many companies even struggle with as they're implementing. Just an overview within the portfolio, most companies have challenges getting the right talent and the right skill within their businesses to be able to effectively deliver the goals that they have. If you may just highlight how, as you worked within the HR department and they're now leading the whole operations in Lesotho, how did you manage to tackle that area of getting the right skills within the company to deliver the work that you're meant to?
Thank you, Chieta, for giving me that opportunity. It's really within, like I have said, we have a high unemployment rate and everyone is looking for a job and everyone is probably deserving, but most people are not applying. That's the first thing, and maybe they don't have the right tools for applying most of the time when you haven't worked before and you haven't. So all of that brings within how you attract talent, how you get the people to applying for your position, how you advertise yourself to the people, which people you press on that they are allowed to, because sometimes it comes to, am I allowed to apply for this position, because you have been so marginalized for so long that you don't even know as a woman you're encouraged to apply. And we do also accept differently abled people to apply for positions like this one, for instance. So therefore, our posts, our looking for talent, for instance, we also have shops within the country in rural areas, and we would also make it very intentional that we hire within the villages that we have the shops. So that also made it a competitive, really a cleverly put competitive behavior within the people in the district area to be able to apply and know that it was only the people within that village or that district that would qualify first, qualifying them because they're within the area and they know the area better than the other people, and this is the place that we're trying to encourage or grow. So therefore, that and a lot of many other things that we did for a factory and a distributor, it was very difficult to also put in place because our laws are so far behind. Maternity, parental leaves, all of these things brought up to women being retainable in the country, in the company, and also being able to stay for longer and attract other people with really good intentions to grow, because there were so many benefits that they could see, which are not namely only money. They were also having an environment that you can be yourself and actualize and grow. Also growing is a very important factor in this. Once you are in and you're captured, we look into your talent and grow you to becoming who you initially were meant to be.
Thank you, Retabile, for such a comprehensive response. And in addition to that, I would add the way ACE pivoted and developed ACE Academy really, is transformational insofar as getting the right skills and training the people that you have within the existing team. And I will hold that thought there and go back to Felix, just to get an understanding, Felix, on when you started off your journey in the energy access sector. I know you had your goals that you had. Probably, when we put things down on paper, usually it's all the nice fancy things up to Timbuktu. I just want to get an overview of where you were at that point when you were starting, and as you were implementing and started off your business. Are the goals that you had at that point still the same? What differences have you seen? Have they evolved in any way? Yeah, over to you, Felix.
Yeah, so I think in principle, the goals have not much changed. And I think we have already achieved many of those that we wanted, even though I think if I look back like 4 years ago when we incepted SolarWorks, I had thought that we would have reached more scale than we have reached so far. So, I mean, just to give you the numbers, so we're operating around 5,000 solar systems across Africa, and we're operating currently 2 mesh grids, and 2 more are in basically development. So we are like probably addressing 25,000 people or so as we speak. But my lesson learned was that everything takes always probably twice as long as you originally anticipated. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with how you run your business. It is what I would even consider force majeure. Like, COVID came up, and then of course we had, especially logistic for us is a big hiccup, where we get containers stuck, and very often, sadly, I have to say, due to corruption, for whatever reason, stuff is not working, and you don't even know who's waiting for whom, but that just delays your business. And I think my lesson from this is also that you have to have enough runway and a very long breath to go through this as an entrepreneur. especially when your financial resources are limited in the beginning, and you really need to, like, you know, flip every coin twice. Yeah.
Thanks, Felix. And I would really love to hear, as a follow-up to your response. You know, we have this valley of death that companies go through. You spoke about having sufficient runway for you to be able to at least make it through certain, you know, processes and seasons of the business. Yeah. Can you please highlight to us, you know, how you have managed even through COVID and all the challenges that you know, you went through, how you managed to keep the lights on and continue operating?
Yeah, well, I think so. We've been pushing very hard on the financial side, of course, to bridge this kind of valley of death with grants until we are, you know, so the amount of grants that we initially had was probably covering 60% of our yearly revenue, sometimes even more. And as we went along in 2020, this dropped to like something like 15% or so of our revenue is grants. So I think this is what really bridged that difficult time. And then honestly, I have to say, sometimes it's a bit of luck. So you have to bring a very innovative product to the markets. And if you find the right leads, you might just make enough money to actually breach that profitability. So I think a bit of luck is always involved there. And then it's just very hard work. So just never really give up, and you know, take the defeat sometimes, and then just, you know, get up and try the next thing if the other one didn't work. You know.
That's great, and part of it is actually advice to those listening and those who are still early stage companies, that, you know, the road is not necessarily easy, but perseverance and just being innovative and continuing to engage is critical.
I also I think the resources that you are spending on the funding, you know, it's very critical that you spend them in the right way. So really identify those grants and those investors that really fit you, because initially in the first 1.5 years we've been like basically doing the shotgun principle where we just applied for a lot of things. Why we did not really do the diligence on the investors, thinking of would they actually be interested. So put yourself into the perspective of the particular investor or grant donor that you are talking to, and see if you would be a good fit for them, or if they already have tons of portfolio companies that do the same thing that you do. So you really have to stick out. I think that is the point I want to make.
That's a very critical point, and very interesting also to be hearing from a project developer's side on having companies doing their due diligence on the investors. Usually it's the investors who are coming in and looking at the companies and doing due diligence, but certainly there has to be that fit on what, you know, what exactly you need within the business at what particular time, and is that investor that is coming in a good fit to support the business that you want to roll out. I will come back to Retabile, and I would like to hear from you this Rising Energy Leader Award. What does it mean to you personally?
First of all, it's very exciting. It's beautiful to receive such an award. But it also lets you know a number of things, that you cannot go anything lower anymore. You have to strive for success, and you have been given an opportunity to shine. And so, like it says, I'm on the right track, and it also says, okay, African Clean Energy, you are doing what somebody else is being able to recognize and appreciate and applaud, because I think critics will really context to this, that it's really difficult what we're doing, and we persevere every day, and we get into serious problems. Some days it's harder than others, and some not, and some days you're like, I don't know, but some days you're like, this is the day, and it's so beautiful, and I'm enjoying it, and I don't want it to end. But if you don't want it to end, then you track along and you keep striving for excellence. You keep going on, you keep doing it, you keep making it. So I'm encouraging also with the audience that sometimes it's really hard, but sometimes it pays off when it's done. And I'm really appreciative, and on behalf of ACE, I really am thankful, grateful that somebody's seeing the hard work that we're putting into it. Thank you.
That's really nice to hear, Ritabile. And just to, as a follow-up question to that, you mentioned that, it's not always easy. May you please just highlight, just top level, the challenges that you have faced as a leader in leading your company in Lesotho?
Thank you. Being a woman, I'm sure everybody knows that it's very difficult to be in this type of a position, and sometimes you have to prove yourself a lot more times before people can understand that you're really in it and you are in it for the right reasons. And well, the problems surrounding being a woman leader in a country that traditionally women are marginalized and they're pushed behind, and they have places such as just the kitchen and not in the office, and let alone being in a decision-making table. Those are everyday problems that you have to solve within also just policy making organizations, or just coming to an office for a certain thing that you needed for the company. It's always hard to get the licensing right, everything, the legislation right. You have to make sure that you're always on par with what the country is saying about the rules about anything. And all of that comes even extra hard when it's a woman demanding that it happens the way it should be happening. And so also, because we are in renewables and our country is not really we wouldn't say it's very developed in terms of policy making and the education level towards also the end users and also towards the nation as a whole, and trying to be the person that's watching that we are not harvesting when we didn't plow, such things, So it's also a challenge that I'm faced with externally here, because I feel an obligation to teach and make people aware about what renewables is, climate change is, where we want to go with this. And sometimes it's extra hard when you're the only one singing a song that nobody really has heard about before.
Yeah, what you have just said resonates a lot with, the stories that we hear from project developers, and, the need to raise awareness. We have other project developers who are introducing new technologies, completely new technologies in nascent markets, and they are struggling because there's a huge need for awareness raising, just for people within the community to be activated, just to have the market activated, and to enable them to know that there are actually these options for them to take up and consume. It's a huge challenge that we have seen across the board. But also, as project developers are working in developing their projects, and with EEP coming on board, we're not able to fix all the problems, but we have, services that we provide in terms of capacity building, in sales and marketing. The budget construction itself can also have a component where you can conduct some sales and marketing to at least try and activate the market. Let me go back to Felix. I would like to know, Felix, at the point when you applied for the EEP Africa grant for your company, what exactly did you need from that grant? Why did you apply for a grant from EEP Africa?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and particularly important for us because you know, when we apply for grants, typically we have one big problem, is that we as the manufacturer don't have the direct impact. So the developers in Africa get the impact, but we are just, so to say, the generic manufacturer. And for that, also the money that we raised on the equity was mostly for growth. So we were not just allowed to play around with it. We could not just say we want to develop a new innovation here, the mesh in this case. And EEP Africa was one of the first donors that particularly said, this is a grant that allows you to start something entirely new. And I think that freedom that we were given by this grant was great, and it allowed us to finance our entire R&D for the course of the last 2 years. So we were able to set up a R&D hub in Cameroon, where basically we are developing our tech doorstep and, you know, testing it by our engineers who are programming the firmware, programming the backend, the front end, the Android app that runs this mesh. And yeah, I think without the grant, technically the mesh would have died off already, because we wouldn't have had the funds to keep on, you know, doing the R&D on this. And now I think it allowed us to go from a, you know, there's always this technology readiness level. And when we started with this, we were probably at TRA level 2. And now I think we are in a level of 9 from 10 or so, in a pre-commercial, commercial kind of phase with the mesh at the moment. Yeah.
Felix, just to follow up on that as well, can you please just, you know, let us know how your experience has been working with EEP Africa?
Yeah, so you know, we got visited in Berlin in our headquarters by our previous you know, person in contact of EEP with Slotter, and it has always been pleasant, like, you know, and quite easy. So whenever we said, okay, we need a budget revision, we need to change something here, it was not exactly according to plan, it was always very easy to do that. And yeah, I think so. I really appreciate what you guys have done, and I can only, like, you know, incentivize everyone to apply for working with EEP.
Thank you, Felix. We'll recruit you as part of our marketing team to get more innovative projects to come and apply for EEP Africa grant funding. Retabile, over to you. Please just, you know, share your experiences. How have you experienced working with EEP Africa?
I share the sentiments. Actually, of course, you always have to do the right things, and especially with grants and so. But in this case, it was always easy to contact when you needed to contact the office and you needed answers. How can I do this? Is this allowed? Can I change this? I'm seeing that this situation is changing towards this. Can I be able to change that? It would be in timely, and it would be in a good, really nice manner that you would get answers and get even a suggestion. Maybe you might want to try this. We've seen it work this way. And so that makes it a very nice working environment, and you're not just thinking, oh, I'm going to have to report, oh, there is coming. So that, all of that already, our work, I've already related that it's really hard. You're dealing with so many other things, and the last thing is you need another stress from a mutual partner that you are really looking in the right direction together. And so that I never felt with EEP the whole time that we were in contract with them. And as he has said as well, I would really encourage other people, because it doesn't give you more stress on already problems that you have. In fact, it takes you out of the problems, and it makes it better for you. It makes it worth it. And you feel that, okay, yeah, while I'm doing this, I have people who are supporting me. And when I have a problem, I have where I can go for answers. And I am not in a position to make mistakes so much, because before I could even do mistakes, I am able to relate and say, hey, I wanted to do this. Is that correct? Can I go on with it this way? And be given a heads up. And that I can always appreciate, because some of the times, sometimes with these funds, the problem would always be that it's better to be right on paper than to be right in real life and make life-changing decisions to people, for people, than to be right with what we initially agree, which doesn't work anymore. It's COVID now, you know. So yes, the fact that we have support that is understanding, that is able to go with you through the journey while going, it's no longer, I gave you the money, I want to see if you're not going to do what we planned, proposed for you to do. And it's always with, I want to find out if I am doing the right thing in what we have done. And it's always really, really very kind.
Thank you, Ratabile. It really is good feedback. I'm sure even the team behind who are listening have their hearts all warmed up to hear that, you know, at least we are sufficiently supporting and trying by all means to support businesses in their growth trajectory. And just to sum of our discussions, yeah, I would like to give you an opportunity to just say a few words to, I guess, the next cohort of EEP Africa grantees, the ones that are listening and have joined and are planning to apply for the grant funding. What would you advise them to do? We'll start off with Ratabile and then end with Felix.
Thank you, I'll go for it. In fact, I would go for it if I were you, and I would make sure that I have my books right, of course, and while at it, I would make sure that what the money is meant for goes to at least really where it was meant to go, because this, for investors to come and invest, or for a country, for a company, if things don't happen the way they should, and especially that happens a lot in Africa, I'm sorry, but if things don't happen the way they should, then funders and investors are going to run out of not a particular company alone, but also what the country. So when you write by whatever amount, as little or as big as it is, what needs to be done, then you are depriving other people the chances that they would have gotten through what you would have achieved. So it's a double-edged sword. You deprived yourself, the company, you're depriving the country, you're depriving also the continent. So therefore, I would really encourage that we go for it, but for the right reasons, and we do what we said we're going to do, follow through and make it work. It's hard, but it can work. We've seen it work. Myself and Felix have seen it work. It can work, and I encourage you to do it wholeheartedly. And yes, when you come across problems, I am testament to this. You can be in a position to ask questions, and you will be helped. And so therefore, please, I encourage you, you can go for it.
Yeah, I don't have so much to add. I can very much echo this. I think it is also a responsibility, because indeed, if you get that grant and you have the chance to do what you always wanted, don't waste it and really put the money where you said it should go, and take the opportunity. And so yeah, totally go for it, apply for it, and put a lot of effort indeed into the application process, so you make it a plausible case. And that really also gives you the opportunity to think through your business model, if that is a solution that can actually ever really work. Then hopefully it will. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you both for joining us today, and congratulations once again. To our audience, you will find a more in-depth profile of our rising energy leaders published on our website next month. And at this point, I really feel like giving Felix and Ratabile a round of applause. Of course, I know everyone is on mute, but I'm going to do it still. And I hope everyone else is doing that. I have faith. But yeah, thank you for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to continue, interacting and learning from each other as the businesses grow. Now, I will allow our rising energy leaders to disconnect, if they may, or to continue with the presentation and listen in. They probably might also be interested to apply again for EEP Africa financing. But before we move to the next section of our presentation, I would like to mention that since we started this Rising Energy Leaders Award in 2020, 3 project developers that have been awarded for Rising Energy Leaders are based in Malawi. They are Malawians that are running innovative projects and businesses in Malawi. And we have been observing with sadness what has been happening in Malawi the past couple of days due to the cyclone. And I just wanted to say that we are sending you lots of strength from the EEP Africa team, and we hope that you and your teams in the field continue to take caution and will remain safe. And now we'll move on to the next segment of our presentation. And here we want to talk about what makes a strong application for EEP Africa financing. And I will go through a couple of tips just for applicants to be aware and to take heed. Can we go to the next slide? I will speak through eligibility. So when you ask yourself, am I eligible to apply? You have to answer these questions, or you have to tick these boxes. So EEP Africa supports legally registered entities. So you have to be legally registered. You can be an international company, you could be an early stage company, you could be a startup, you could be a social enterprise. We need to see that you have your registration documents in place. And if you're an international company, we need to see that you at least have a team that is on the ground in the area or geographic area that you want to implement. If you do not have a team on the ground, at least you have local partners that understand the market, that are able to be your feet on the ground and can implement the project that you want to implement. In terms of geography, you see highlighted the 15 countries that we work in, and I see in the chat box as well, we have listed those 15 countries. Your project has to be in implementation in those geographic areas. In some cases, we have one company that is implementing the same project, but in 2 different countries. That is also allowable, as long as you demonstrate that you have local partners or you have local presence that will enable you to deliver your project effectively. And EEP Africa provides the grant funding for 24 months, ideally. However, as you've heard from our rising energy leaders, we're also flexible. So we understand that when you're implementing a project, sometimes there are delays that might occur. COVID-19, for instance, delayed quite a number of activities, and so we are flexible to provide no-cost extensions when they are required. Technologies, UC also mentioned this previously. We are not biased towards any specific technology. We are technology agnostic, as long as the technology that you want to introduce is promoting renewable energy, clean energy, and energy efficiency. So it could be a technology, it could be a business model that you would want to try out. As long as it's linked to clean energy and energy efficiency, you will be eligible. We fund different types of projects, and they could be feasibility studies. You could be at a pilot stage, or you would want to recommend to replicate a project that you're doing in one country and you want to do it in another country, and you would need grant funding to come in and cushion the costs of starting up and setting up a business in that particular location. You're also eligible for EEP Africa grant funding. You could also be a scale-up. Maybe you have already proven your business case, or you have proven a business model, and you would want to scale up your business. You're also eligible to apply for EEP financing. Next slide, please. We will look at what we do not fund at all, the exclusion list. So we do not support any initiative that promotes the production of electricity or power generation using fossil fuels. We also do not support any initiative that is linked to LPG technologies. We do not fund policy development. We do not fund capacity building or training or market studies. If you have a technology that you want to introduce in a market, we do not fund specifically technology research. What we can come in on the technology front, if you have a technology that you want to try out, it has to be backed up by a business model. Because we are here to support sustainable businesses. In terms of business models and technologies as well, we also understand that markets are at different levels of maturity. We have nascent markets, we have emerging markets, mature markets, and innovation can be defined differently in those different markets. So once you are preparing your project or your idea, please just have an analysis to see whether what you want to introduce into that market or what you're working on, is it innovative in that particular market? There are certain business models or certain technologies that are overly saturated in some markets, and in that case, it will not be an innovative idea. So you have to have a good understanding of your market and ask yourself the question, is the business model that I'm introducing or the technology that I'm bringing in, is it overly saturated? Is it something that is not proven already? If it is not, then it is already proven. If it's already a saturated business model, then it's something that we would not support. We move on to what the grant itself can cover. So this grant financing is coming in to support your business to become successful. So as a project developer and your team, you're the ones who know where exactly you would need the support to come in. So we give you the flexibility of drawing out your budget and how you're going to allocate the EEP Africa grant financing. However, there are certain categories or certain costs that we cover, and these are personnel costs, fixed assets or goods. Maybe you're a company that requires stock, you're able to purchase stock using EEP Africa funds. In cases that you need external services or consultants to provide you certain services, maybe you're still an early stage company and you need support in HR services or financial management, that is something that you can include in your budget. We also cover office costs. We cover transportation and travel. Definitely audit, because the EEP Africa project would need to be audited at the end of the project. In the case that you require licensing and permits, this is also something that can be covered by EEP Africa. Next slide, please. So what do we desire in terms of characteristics of a grantee? UC mentioned skin in the game. We really need to see that you have put in the work in the business that you're putting forward, or in the project that you're putting forward. You might not have necessarily have everything in place, but we need to see that there is some effort that has been put in, some work that has been put in into your idea or your project and your business. And the EEP grant is coming in to then enable and catalyze certain movement within your business. And that skin in the game can be illustrated in co-financing, for instance. You bring a certain amount of co-financing to show that you're in the business. Lucy also mentioned that we now have this in-kind contribution, and this will clearly be defined in the call for proposals guidelines. And our expectation is that co-financing or skin in the game will not be less than 30%. So we're looking at a minimum of 30% co-financing. And for mature companies, it can go up to 50%. We also need to see that you have clearly defined roles and responsibilities in the case that you are working with partners. So we do have quite a number of businesses that would come in, put forward a proposal, but because they know they do not have capacity in a certain area, they identify either technology partners or technical partners that come in to enable them to effectively deliver the project. So we would need to see clearly defined roles if you have partners, and within the team itself, we would want to see who is within the team, what are their roles, and if there are any vacant positions that are there, we expect that you just honestly, indicate which positions are vacant, and these could be put as deliverables in your milestones as you're implementing. We really need to see that you have strong local presence. Our experience has shown that for companies that have strong local presence, their delivery is much better than partners, than project developers that do not have either teams on the ground or local implementing partners. And not only in the delivery of the project, but also in understanding the local context. So there are certain challenges that businesses might face, and these could be as a result of just not understanding how the local market works. So it's highly desirable for us when you apply to show and demonstrate that you have local presence and that you have a key understanding of the market and the customers that you intend to reach. We have another arm that provides business development support. This was also alluded to by UC. Business development support is providing technical assistance and capacity building for companies. We understand that companies sometimes are not fully equipped. You might come, particularly for the early stage companies, you might not have your financial manuals in place, or you do not have your HR processes in place. What we need from you is for you to be honest in the application process, and you are not going to be penalized by being honest. We would just want to understand the cohort that we have insofar as the applications have come in, so that we adequately prepare to see, okay, how much of capacity building is required in which particular area. So we expect that you are honest and highlight the areas that you would require capacity building as a company. And it is also highly desirable that you clearly state why you require EEP Africa grant funding. So that would, you should ask yourself, if EEP Africa wasn't coming in, then what would the business position be? You should clearly state, why you require EEP financing and where you expect it to take you. That gives us an indication of additionality of our financing to say, okay, if EEP Africa is coming in, what change is it bringing into this early stage company? What change is it bringing into this mature company that already has everything established? So you really have to be clear why you need EEP Africa grant funding. And apart from investing in innovation, innovative business models, we also invest in the people that are behind the business. So we expect that you are active in communication once you start this grant application process. We expect transparency and honesty, and we also expect respectful communication. Those are some of the indicators that even show us, you know, the type of project developer that we would be dealing with. So when you're working on developing your application, please keep in mind that it is always a positive sign if you're proactively communicating, if you're transparent and honest in your application, as well as showing enthusiasm and showing that you're committed to the work that you're doing. This will just summarize everything that we have spoken about, you know, just hammering the fact that we are seeking innovation, we are seeking solutions that are locally driven. We would like to see how you're promoting inclusiveness within your businesses, either, you know, along the value chain or within the customer segments that you are targeting. We also would like to see how you're working with the bottom of the pyramid. So are you reaching the last mile? You know, who are you working with? What is your target? What is your target market? We also desire to see projects that have a mitigation or adaptation element to climate change. And once you are developing all your work and your projects, please ensure that at least you are speaking to some of the elements that we have highlighted. You might not be speaking to all of them, but for those areas that you are speaking to, please ensure that you're clearly explaining either how you're reaching to the bottom of the pyramid, or how your business model is inclusive, or how your project is mitigating or adapting to climate change, or if there are any significant core benefits that are there to the local communities, please ensure that you're clearly stating those as well. And we will move to the next slide, where we have the list of documents that I would advise for you to get ready. So if you are interested in applying to this next call, these are the documents that you should have ready at expression of interest stage. If you do not have these documents, you will not be eligible to apply. So there are some that are a must to have, and these are the first two. So company registration, as I highlighted, we work with registered, legally registered companies. So you have to have your company registration documents in place. You have to have your TIN registration number or your business number to show that you have registered for, you know, for tax, and bank account confirmation. So for these three items, you definitely have to have them at expression of interest stage. And then there are other documents that we also expect in cases where your project requires you to have land. We require to see your land permits or land rights. For partners that you could be working with, we expect to see letters of intent from your partners, not communication that you intend to partner, but we actually expect signed letters that are coming from your partners to ensure or to demonstrate that you at least have your partners in place. For more mature companies, we expect to see financial reports, and we also expect to have a clear plan of licensing and permits that are required for you to conduct your project or to run the business. Risk mapping and mitigation, we expect you to understand your market, to understand your project, and what risks are they, and how you would intend to mitigate those risks. And if you have any interaction or you've been supported by other investors, we would need to see some referral letters from those past investors. Next slide, please. And we're going to move to typical questions that we usually receive after we make such a presentation. So for some of you, I'm sure some of you maybe attended some events that we had in Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, and we collected a number of questions that we received just to preempt maybe some questions that you already have. So one of the most common questions is, can I apply for EEP Africa financing if I do not have co-financing? And the answer is yes, you may, but in such a case, we expect you to present a credible plan on how you're going to obtain your co-financing. So if you're a very early stage company, we also know that there are challenges with securing co-financing or additional financing. In the case that you manage to go through, it will be listed as a major business development support need to provide services for investment facilitation and support you to get co-financing. So what we also require is, before the project has started, we can have that contracting process, we have that process of providing investment facilitation, but we have to have verified co-financing before we disburse any funds to a particular company. And what can be considered as co-financing? So co-financing can be in the form of equity. You could have probably a loan from the bank. It could be another grant that you have from another investor. And part of that co-financing can be covered by in-kind contributions. And as I mentioned before, this will be further clarified in the application guidelines. Can NGOs, research institutions, or government institutions apply for EEP Africa grant? The answer is no. Unfortunately, EEP Africa's mandate is to support legal entities that aim to run a business. And this typically means that social enterprises or companies that are registered as businesses. In some cases, we have those companies partner with non-governmental organizations, for instance, to provide community engagement, market activation, awareness raising. So NGOs or government departments can come in as partners. However, the company that's leading has to be a business, a legally registered entity that is running the business. Can my company be awarded more than one EEP Africa grant? The answer is no. And any lead applicant can only have one active grant at a given time. However, you may appear as a partner in another application, and in the case that such involvement is not seen to distract you from EEP Africa project, you may apply for another grant as a lead applicant. So we do have within the portfolio cases where a portfolio company is a technical advisor to another company, and that does not distract them from implementing the grant or the project that they would have received support for from EEP Africa. Are there any target commitments in the call based on fund size, geography, or technology? The answer is no. However, EEP Africa aims to support a diversified portfolio. So we do not run calls that are specific to a specific country. The call is it's open for East Africa and Southern Africa, and it can go across different technologies, different business models, yeah, it's quite a diverse portfolio that we have. And for you to probably get an idea, you can visit our website and see what we have in our current old portfolio to get a sense of the diversification that we have within the portfolio. And this brings us to the end of our presentation. And if you are interested, which I believe most of you are, to apply in the next call, please sign up for our EEP Africa newsletter and social media channels. Once we launch the call, we're going to announce it in the social media channels and through the newsletter. And just advice, when that call for proposal application guidelines come out, please take time to thoroughly go through it and also go through the project implementation manual, and we'll also post frequently asked questions on our website that will help guide as you're developing your proposal. We are expecting to launch the call on the 14th of April, all things being equal. If we do not manage to launch on the 14th, you will get notification once you have signed up for our newsletter. And if you feel that your business idea is still too early, not to worry at all. You can start getting ready for next year's call, because we intend to be putting out annual calls from this year going forward. If you have any questions, if you are listening into the recording, you can feel free to reach out to us. Our next slide has our contact details. You can reach out with your questions, and we are happy to assist and answer any questions that you may have. And at this point, we shall open up the floor for question and answer. I'll call Yusi to come back on the floor so that we address any questions that might arise from the audience. And Kenneth, over to you.
We have a number of questions. I think I can just highlight some of them. I'll just try to cluster them quite a lot. So the first key questions which have come through, I think I have 4 of them. It's between the country of registration and country of implementation. Most of the questions are asking, must I be registered in the country where the project is being implemented, or can I be globally registered, maybe in the Europe, but then apply for the for the call for proposal and then implement in any of the target countries? You see, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So for us, the geographic restriction is really where the project takes place. As long as you are a registered legal entity, you can sign a contract with us, but your project activities that we are funding have to happen in the geographic region that was highlighted in this presentation, so in Southern Eastern Africa.
Thank you so much for that. I think it brings a lot of clarification. And just to confirm, SolarWorks, Felix was here, company is registered in the Europe, but implementing in one of our target countries, which is in Zambia. Again, regarding the target countries for EEP, I have a number of queries here, and the first one was whether EEP is in Central Africa and West Africa, and if there are any plans to go there. And the other one was if an organization has a very brilliant idea, an innovative idea with a lot of impact, but then in this case, maybe it's in Ethiopia and Ethiopia is not in that target country, then can they still apply? You see, or Chita?
Yeah, I can. That's pretty much the same answer as to the previous one. So the target countries are the list that you can get from our website, and also in this presentation, I think it was also posted in the chat. So Ethiopia, Western Africa, DRC, they are not, for example, they are not currently our focus countries. Our focus countries will be always kind of defined and approved by donors. So the upcoming call will be in those 15 countries that we currently cover. But just as an example, in 2018, we expanded to Malawi and Zimbabwe. So before 2018, EEP Africa coverage was only 13 countries. Now we are 15. In the future, if we expand or not, then that depends a lot on the funds that we have available and then our kind of donor appetite. So we will review our geographic coverage periodically, but it always requires an approval of our donors. But if we expand, we will surely let you know. So please sign up for our newsletter and our social media. We will definitely blast it out through all channels if we include additional countries. But the earliest it would be possible would be for the next year's call, pending donor interest.
Okay. Yeah, the next phase is on co-financing. So we had a query: at what stage does co-financing need to be proven? I think I can check this one. I think just like being mentioned by Chetsa, we require to do a verifications of the co-financing at the contracting stage. So we'll give you an opportunity throughout to have a very clear plan of just establishing and managing your co-financing. And then at the point of the contracting, we normally do a verification to confirm. If you have very clear plans, we can actually contract, but then what we cannot do is we cannot release disbursement until we can actually confirm that the co-financing which you would actually committed to is available and can actually be used for the project implementation. Most important to highlight is the co-financing requirement for EEP is used as a match funding to do your implementation. So we don't want to have a co-financing which just lies there, but it has to be available in cash to be spent. As you spend every euro for the EEP grant, then we also expect you on the same percentage of co-financing which has been provided is also available for you to continue spending both the EEP funding and the co-financing together. Ideally, they used to complement each other, and that's what we always use for our analysis. The next query we had of co-financing was if we can mention different kind of in-kind contributions, which will be possible. At the moment, just like we had highlighted earlier in the presentation, that in-kind contributions, it's a new flexibility which is being introduced in this new call for proposal. We are still trying to tweak and provide more details around what will actually qualify, but the obvious actors like your technical contribution in terms of maybe staff, but we don't want to provide any commitments right now, but we are going to provide more details in the next call for proposal when we provide our guidelines. But ideally, if you're very familiar with the normal in-kind contributions, which number one must be quantifiable, is verifiable, and actually we can convert it in cash basis in terms of valuing it, that is what we'll be looking, and more details will be coming in the call guidelines. And then the other one was for startup companies in the region where angel investors or access to debt financing is non-existent and formal finance and investment environment is highly risk averse. Co-financing would be quite difficult. How would EEP be willing to support startups that may not be able to afford required co-financing in part or all? This was also a very good query which came from one of the participants. I think I can also check this one. Listening to Chisa's presentation, one thing that she has mentioned is skin in the game. And what EEP tries to really get a hold of is just to ensure that we can actually see some form of skin in the game in it. We've had projects which have really had a very good plan in terms of just getting co-financing, but then towards that stage, they realize it's coming extremely hard. We've seen some of the owners of this company even approach banks, and they get like a small debt just to kickstart activities. And some of these things are the things which we are looking at in terms of what is the skin in the game for each and every project which is being proposed. The idea is we're trying to create businesses, and there is risk for both the EEP and also for the organization. So it's just a matter of trying to balance the risk between us as EEP and also you as the investor, who at the end of the day is the owner of this business. So we really want to emphasize that there's need to have very clear plans on co-financing. And by the time you get contracted, there's a very visible and available liquid, let me just call it liquid cash in form of co-financing that can quickly be used to implement some of these activities. And this ties also to another query which was asked whether equity, whether EEP considers equity as part of co-financing. And as like the presentation was, yes, we can consider. But most important is the equity which is available, whether it's reserves, it's cash, or whichever way it's available, has to be liquid enough to enable you with the implementation. So like we've said, we want to match during the implementation throughout. So if your equity contribution is available and is in cash, then you're at an advantage because you can quickly then get a disbursement from us so that you can complement the equity which is available in liquid form to continue implementing and attracting more disbursement from EEP based on the contract that you have. I'll jump to the next one, which was also at company stage. And Chitsa, you can take this one. We've worked in clean cooking energy sector in African regions for 10 years, and we are looking to expand to our business by entering a new country through this program. In this case, what percentage of co-financing would you expect from us? I think this is co-financing, can still take it, but then I'll tweak it for just the same query has been tweaked twice. So for co-financing, minimum qualification in terms of co-financing, like emphasize, is 30%. And depending on the size of the company, guidelines will be provided then based on the size of the company, then how much of that co-financing can actually be equated to in-kind and what is available in cash. So as long as the organization is able to tick the different boxes which are required in terms of qualification to implement in that specific country registration, when it comes to co-financing, as long as it's above, it's within the 30%, can be above. We've seen organizations which are quite scaling there where they actually do more. Even more than 100% of what they are seeking from EEP. So I can say this is based on the needs of that company at the proposal development or based on the innovation that you have and the financial muscle that you have at that stage. So this we don't impose, we just give a guideline in terms of what's the minimum required. Then when you're doing your budgeting, you're able to plan it accordingly. But then I had the same question where a company says they operate in Ghana and West Africa where they've been implementing quite well and they're successful. But then through this call for proposal, they want to expand to regions within our target 15 countries. In this case, what are they required so that they can actually be able to apply? They're registered and operating from West Africa, but they want to scale their business, which is doing quite well, to one of the target countries within the 15 region countries. Cheta?
Thanks, Kenneth. So as highlighted in the presentation, we really need to see the demonstration that we have some local presence. If you do not have a team that is local in the country that you intend to expand to, we expect that you have a local partner who will be your boots on the ground. So that we require, because we have seen that it is project developers are able to more effectively engage and implement their businesses and projects when they have local representation, but also for you to have a good understanding of the market where you would want to implement your business or your project. So we would encourage you to start looking, if you do not already have, for suitable local partners that you'll be able to work with in the delivery of your project.
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, you can also check this one. How is eligibility for funding application defined in terms of the company size? If I understand this question, the participant is trying to seek whether there is a minimum company size that we are looking at in terms of trying to evaluate whether an organization can apply. And maybe before you jump in, you can just indicate that we're extremely keen just to review that this company has been registered, has been operating, and we always do some small tests just to confirm that this company has been operating and it's not a briefcase company. So yes, in terms of the minimum, if it's one individual, it's really quite risky for us as an investor. And we're not saying we'll not consider, but we're just saying it's good as we evaluate then the size of the company when it comes to the minimum requirements. We always want to see, does it have a team? Do they exist? Have they been paid a salary in the past? Have they ever reported? Do they have a board which sits with them? So in terms of size, I'll just speak of the minimum, that there are few things we normally check us just to ensure it's not a briefcase company. It's really operating, it has an office, we can actually see the office, we can engage with a number of these employees. But then when it comes to also size, in terms of how big is it, we are not limited. Cheta, do you want to add something in terms of the company size?
Yes, I would add that we expect that the company has been registered at least for 6 months. That would, give us some level of confidence that there has some work that has already been done in terms of building out the business itself. But let me also be quick to highlight that about 60% of our portfolio is early stage companies. As you see highlighted, where we have a huge risk appetite. So it doesn't necessarily matter that you're an early stage company. That's actually where our niche is. So as long as you're ticking those boxes, as long as you have been in operation for 6 months and you're demonstrating that you have some work that you have already put into the business, then you're eligible to apply.
Thank you so
maybe
much.
I can quickly chip in also. There is the other end of it, although somebody might be thinking these questions like, am I too mature to apply for a grant? So we are looking more of the project concept. So the project maturity, not that much necessarily the company maturity. So in some cases, you might have a very experienced team who has been around for a long time, but they are trying to implement the project that is very risky, hasn't been done before. It's like a first mover in a new market. So it's always the kind of the activities that you're applying for. We are more focusing on the maturity of the project idea, not so much on the company. If you are a more mature company, then we might want to see a bit more skin in the game, that you are not just applying for the minimum 30% of co-financing, but then it's always up to the evaluators and in the end the investment committee how they define kind of skin in the game and is the grant needed in those cases. So for more mature companies, you really need to focus on additionality of the grant. Do you need the grant to make this thing? That's what the evaluation team would be focusing.
Thank you so much. Still, I can also throw this on your side. Does EEP provide project post-financial closeout support and mentorship?
That's for me?
Yes, that's for you.
Yes, could be possible, but I think for us, if it's post-financial close, I think this most likely links to a feasibility study. So our grant would probably be used for the feasibility study that leads towards the financial close. Then, of course, we try to keep contact with our past grantees. There might be a training on that type of thing in the future. So it is possible, but anything that you want to do with the grant, you should kind of tie it into your kind of grant application. Like, this is where I need kind of a grant for. So as there was a GS that showed the slide on what the grant can be used for, we are very flexible with that. You just kind of have to tell us a functional concept where the need for that grant is kind of really well founded. So if that's part of your proposal, then the grant can be also used for that. And in some cases, we can also look into if we have some advisory assistance that could be provided to grantees who need that kind of support. But that would be always evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So once you have an active grant, then you get access to our team, to our advisors, and any potential needs that are not part of the grant already. Then we can assess those case-by-case basis if there is some added value that we can bring, or some of our partners can bring, if our kind of sector peers are more suited to provide that type of advisory or mentorship, then we can connect you with those type of players in the field.
Thank you so much. Chita, this one is for you. Are you able just to provide the range of funding that's available under EEP?
So our ticket size is between 200,000 and 500,000 euros, or grant financing. It could go up to €1 million depending on the project, and usually that has been the case for feasibility studies, where we then add a repayable grant component to the financing. So this would be on a case-by-case basis, and usually goes up to $1 million for feasibility studies. But I also want to come in on the previous question on support post EEP Africa. We're also, in the process of developing an EEP Africa alumni network, where we would still be in touch with our past portfolio, and as highlighted before, within our social media handles and our newsletter, we continually announce different opportunities. They could be investment opportunities or technical assistance, capacity building, or opportunities that are out there in the sector, which is important information that can be accessed by our past portfolio grantees.
Thank you so much. I think I can take this one. Viability studies on city waste biogas or feasibility studies of the SABE eligible. I think based on what has just been presented, that one of the things that we fund, we do not fund studies per se, but we're open for funding on feasibility studies. And feasibility studies, if they're aligned to the business model that you wish to implement, that's okay. If you have a very good application, it can be reviewed and probably also granted. Most important to highlight is feasibility studies are repayable grant. So we have some grants which are repayable and no more grants. For feasibility studies, we always ensure that it's a repayable grant. I'll pick another one. This is a quick one for you, Chita. Yes, we have quite a lot on NGOs, so I think that has been exhaustively answered. But this one, for you, see if you can take this one. How many projects do you fund per cycle?
Oh, that's a good question, and it depends a lot on the average ticket size of that cycle. Just to give you like a track record from the last 3 calls, I think we did the cohort that was contracted 2019 was 28 companies. After that, following year was 19, and the one after 26. I would say that we are expecting to go a bit bigger this upcoming call, so I would be estimating between 30 to 40 grants in the coming call. But that's a rough estimate, and it really depends on what's the average size of the grant applications that we also get. If we get much more early stage, 200K applications, then obviously with 1 million you can finance five grants. If you get to 500K very good applications, then we could only with 1 million finance 2 grants. But based on the past averages, I'm expecting it to be between 30 and 40 grantees that we will be contracting from this call.
Okay, I think that's a very good response. I'm extremely cautious of time, and I have to be cognizant. There's quite a lot of questions coming in, and I'd like to emphasize what UC said during the intro, that we're going to pick all these questions and we're going to prepare an FAQ, which will be shared by everybody who's attended this forum. So should your question not have been picked during this time due to time, kindly be on the lookout as we share the reports from this meeting, and all the questions will have been included in the FAQ. And just to emphasize, there's one person who's asking that they never had the funding ranges quite well. Chitsa indicated our ticket sizes are from 100,000 euros to 500,000 euros, and that's a normal grant. based on the size of the project, it can grow all the way to 1 million with 500,000 available there. Due to time cautious, Lucy, I want to throw the mic back to you for the next part of the session, so that we can ensure that we don't go above the time.
Well, I think we might have if there is a couple of very clear questions, we can still take them. Nice. I think we have time until 4 o'clock, so the next item is pretty much just closing the session. So I think we can still do a few minutes on questions if there are some good ones remaining.
Let me pick one. This is quite good, and I'll give it to you. And this has come quite a lot. Please clarify more regarding the in-kind contributions. There's a lot of interest in terms of the in-kind contribution and the percentage, which is within the 30% that we are saying is our minimum qualification. I see a lot of questions regarding how much within that 30% can I squeeze an in-kind contribution.
All right. For that, I think I can give an answer. I think 2/3 of the 30% could be potentially possible if you are a very early stage company. But the exact rules, as mentioned a few times before, we will clarify those in the application guidelines. And the reason for that is that this is a very recent addition to our kind of flexibility. So we need to define it first carefully. And benchmark it also a bit in the sector. So we will have a segment in the application guidelines, and then naturally also in the project implementation manual, which all the successful grantees then will have to follow when they implement their projects. So there will definitely be a very explicit section on the in-kind contribution. So wait a few more weeks, and then you will have kind of a written clarification for that. But yeah, 2/3 I think has been approved by our supervisory board as what we can accept, but very much leading towards the really early stage companies.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I want to pick one more question. I want to know if the technology is not new, but the business model of delivering the technology to the final recipient is unique. Can the applicant be considered? There is a case where the technology is not new, but the business model of delivering the technology is the innovation.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So we have, for example, solar home companies in Malawi as grantees, but we wouldn't necessarily do that in Kenya. So as I think it was mentioned in one of the slides, if your concept is not business as usual in the country, then there can be innovation. So that's what you really have to focus on. If we realize that what you're applying for is already like business as usual, then we would be distorting the market. That's not within our mandate. So technology or the innovation is always considered in the country context. Is it the business as usual solution in that country context? And then you often the innovation happens in the business model side when you're trying to take a proven technology from somewhere else to a nascent market where it doesn't exist at scale. So then usually that's the innovation. There is the business model. So yes, that is fine, and you just have to kind of frame it well in your application. And our evaluation team will be most likely quite knowledgeable about the matter anyway, so they will be able to quite quickly assess if what you're proposing is innovative or not.
Thank you so much. I have a good one from a very real entrepreneur here. Can a company submit 2 expressions of interest for 2 different projects in this call for proposals?
Chester, you me? Right, I can take that then. I heard that a couple of times when we were doing our tour in Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. So again, I would say like read the call guidelines. We will clarify that carefully. In the past, it has not been explicitly kind of forbidden, but just considering from the point of view of the evaluation team, if you're submitting 2 proposals, it might be also regarded that are you really focusing on your business? Do you really know what you want to do if you are kind of throwing multiple applications fast? So consider it also from that perspective, that it might be a red flag to some of the evaluators if you don't have a clear idea of this is the one thing that I need to do to make my business fly.
Thank you so much.
I have another. In that regard as well, Ken, if I may come in. So my encouragement to those who would want to apply is, I understand that at times as a company, you might have different areas where you would want support, but I would encourage you to sit down with your team, have an analysis of where exactly what exactly is the priority, where you have the highest need, and then concentrate and focus on that and submit one application. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much for that. We have another one, which are startups with no operational history considered. I think I can take this one. It's a sensitive one, and it's really also a very realistic one in terms of we have a lot of startups, but then with no operations which are happening. I like to emphasize something that Chitsa mentioned, that the company has to have been registered at least 6 months before this application is being undertaken. And most important, then the only way we can say is a business which is in existence, it has to be some form of evidence of operations. Either you have an office, you have some staff that you have employed, there's some books you're keeping. So if an organization really has no operational history whatsoever, for us that's a risk. I will not discourage you from applying, but most important is then at due diligence stage, what do you have probably when it comes to the documents which might be required as we sit with you, as we engage, just to identify. And also the other item, if the organization has not been operational, then do you have the adequate co-financing which is also required just to implement this project? So wouldn't discourage you, but it's extremely important also to play the entire cycle picture, because at one point there are some things which we are going to be checking just to ensure that the existence and operationalization of this business, even if it's a startup, there's some form of minimal operations which have been undertaken and can confirm the existence of that company. You see, do I still have time for one more question?
Okay, let's take final question and then we'll close quickly.
Okay. Are you able to fund construction activities?
Yes. So we don't really, again, our budget is very flexible, as was presented in one of the GSS slides. You might, for example, be applying for a grant to set up a run-of-river hydro plant, which would require construction activities also, or any kind of setup, biogas production site, whatnot. So we will analyze your concept or kind of project as the concept, like how will this take your business forward, and depending on your project kind of business type, you may need construction activities also to move forward. So depends totally on your project that you be pitching to us. But yes, its construction activities are totally eligible.
Thank you so much. My name is Kenneth Nyange, Portfolio Manager within EEP. That was my time. Back to you, Yussi and Chitsa. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you all. Thank you, GSA, for taking half of the presentation. And yeah, we really look forward to a bunch of strong applications. As GSA mentioned, we had a little bit of a South African promotion tour in late January. There was a lot of good buzz, a lot of good young entrepreneurs in those events. So I'm really hoping there are many more online, and we will get flooded by good applications, and hopefully see many of you in as next kind of a cohort of EEP Africa grantees. And as mentioned a couple of times already, the questions that we didn't manage to answer, we will include in that frequently asked questions document. Anybody who will watch this as a recording later, feel free to submit those questions via the email addresses provided, and we will include those also in that frequently asked questions document. Finally, tomorrow we have final session of our Knowledge Week, focusing more on strengthening the ecosystem for clean cooking solutions, taking really the angle of innovative financing mechanisms, focusing on results-based financing and carbon financing. So if that is an interesting topic to you, please tune in. It's our colleague Faith Cheke, portfolio manager for EEP Africa, who will be leading and moderating that session. So hopefully some of you managed to attend that one too. So it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, and submit those applications. Cheers.